What if the very thing that makes your life feel safe is the same thing that's quietly killing your spirit? We spend years building walls of comfort, soft routines, predictable days, easy pleasures, thinking we're protecting ourselves from pain. But what if comfort isn't protection? What if it's sedation? Every time we choose what's easy over what's true, a small part of us goes silent. Not the good kind of silence, not peace, but the silence of a life that's forgotten how to live. Somewhere along the way, we started confusing comfort with happiness. We traded depth for convenience, challenge for stability, wonder for safety. Our homes became quieter, but our minds never stopped screaming. Our days became predictable, but our hearts forgot how to feel alive. We build entire lives around avoiding discomfort, avoiding solitude, uncertainty, boredom, even silence, as if those things were enemies, not teachers. And yet, every ancient wisdom, every great mind that ever lived pointed in the same direction. Growth never happens in comfort. The truth is, comfort has become our modern illusion of freedom. We live surrounded by everything we thought would make life easier, but somehow, we feel heavier than ever. So maybe the path forward isn't adding more comfort, but learning to live without depending on it. This film isn't about rejecting comfort. It's about remembering what we lost while chasing it. Because in the pursuit of comfort, we forgot how to live. These are the 5 lessons that remind us. The power of silence. There is a kind of sound that doesn't need to be heard to be felt. It's the sound that exists between thoughts, in the pauses between words, in the still air of an early morning before the world wakes. That sound is silence. For centuries, silence has been one of humanity's most underestimated teachers. In the noise of progress, we've mistaken constant sound for life, forgetting that silence is not the absence of something, but the presence of everything we've been too distracted to notice. Socrates, Plato, and Buddha all understood that silence is not a void, but a vessel, a space large enough for truth to echo in. In silence, we meet ourselves without disguise. It's here that self-awareness is born, and where wisdom takes its first breath. Throughout history, silence has carried sacred weight. In temples and monasteries, in deserts and forests, people have sought quiet not to escape the world, but to listen to it more deeply. Buddhist monks meditate in stillness. Christians pray in silence. Taoists seek the harmony that only quiet can reveal. Each practice different in form, but all drawn to the same realization: that beyond language, beyond the noise of the mind, lies something far greater, a communion with what cannot be named. In philosophy, silence is not passivity, it's inquiry. It's the pause before understanding, the moment where assumptions collapse and truth has a chance to surface. Thinkers throughout time have turned to silence to face the limits of language, because words can describe, but they can't always contain. There are emotions too vast, questions too complex, and experiences too sacred to be imprisoned by sound. And yet, silence speaks. It communicates through presence. It's the quiet between lovers who no longer need words, the stillness before an artist's first brushstroke, the hush before a storm breaks. Silence gives meaning to sound. Without it, everything would blur into noise. Cultures have woven silence into ritual and reverence, moments of silence to honor the fallen, silent vigils for peace. Communities gathered not to speak, but to feel together. In those shared still moments, we remember that connection isn't built through words, but through awareness. Even in resistance, silence has power. When the world roars with injustice, silence can become defiance, a refusal to participate in the chaos, a space where truth resists distortion. From Gandhi's days of silence to modern movements that use quiet as protest, stillness becomes a language louder than shouting. But perhaps silence's most profound lesson is this: it reveals the quality of our inner life. When silence feels heavy, it's because our thoughts are loud. When it feels peaceful, it's because we've stopped arguing with reality. And in that silence, we finally hear ourselves. The value of focus. If silence is the soil where awareness grows, then focus is the sun that gives it strength. Without focus, even the most brilliant mind is scattered like light through a prism. Beautiful, but unfocused, unable to burn through anything. With focus, that same light becomes a laser. It cuts, it creates, it transforms. Focus is the rare art of doing one thing deeply. It's not about time management, it's about energy direction. James Cameron once said that producing Titanic and Avatar demanded a super-focused, laser-like attention sustained over years. He wasn't speaking metaphorically. The human brain literally shapes itself around what it repeatedly concentrates on. And what we give attention to, we strengthen. What we neglect, fades. In a world built on distraction, focus has become a revolutionary act. Our devices whisper for attention every few seconds. Notifications, ads, opinions, demands, all designed to fracture our awareness. We've built entire economies on stealing attention, while our own inner economy, the capacity to think deeply, feel clearly, and create meaningfully, quietly collapses. The people who still master focus become the new outliers. Larry Page, co-founder of Google, once said, "You should focus on one important goal and be pretty single-minded about it." Warren Buffett called focus his greatest secret. Not brilliance, not luck, but the ability to say no to everything else. Bill Gates agreed. If you want to be a great software company, you have to be only a software company. They all understood the same law, that greatness doesn't come from doing more, but from cutting away most. Focus demands sacrifice. You can't hold every path and still walk forward. It asks you to abandon your comfort in exchange for clarity, to give up the illusion of endless possibility, and commit to the difficult beauty of one. Those who do discover something extraordinary, that when the mind stops scattering itself across 10,000 things, time slows, meaning deepens, quality replaces quantity. Science echoes this truth. Astrophysicists once built a suitcase-sized telescope that cost only $10 million, compared to the $2 billion of the Hubble. When asked how, the lead scientist said, "We just did one thing exceptionally well." That's what focus does. It multiplies efficiency by collapsing noise. But focus isn't only long-term, it's also moment-to-moment concentration. The ability to shut out distraction and dive fully into now. Jennifer Mather, a behavioral scientist, once said, "I have a ferocious ability to concentrate. I can close the rest of the world off." That ferocity is what separates the dreamers from the doers. And yet, concentration has become an endangered skill. Every ping, buzz, and vibration steals a small piece of our cognitive rhythm. We live in a permanent state of partial attention, half here, half somewhere else. And as our attention fragments, so does our sense of meaning. To focus again, we must learn to subtract. Turn off the phone, mute the noise. Stephen King, one of the most successful writers alive, said, "If you want to be a writer, there should be no phone in your writing room. No TV, no games. Draw the curtains." That's how he wrote stories that shaped generations, not with inspiration, but with concentration. Warren Buffett built his fortune in the quiet of Nebraska, far from Wall Street's chaos. He once said, "It's easier to think here." And maybe that's the secret we've lost. Not that we need more time, but fewer distractions. Focus is freedom. Not the freedom to do everything, but to finally do something well. And in that act, we discover the ancient truth that clarity is not found in addition, but in the art of letting go. The art of slowness. In a culture that glorifies speed, slowness has become a rebellion. We rush toward goals, deadlines, pleasures, even enlightenment, as if life were a race to the finish line. But the finish line, if we're honest, is death. So what are we rushing toward, really? We've mistaken motion for progress. We equate busyness with importance. But productivity without presence is just noise, a life measured in output, not in meaning. The faster we move, the less we feel. The Japanese have a phrase, hurry slowly. It's not about idleness, it's about deliberate pace. A reminder that life is not a sprint of achievement, but a slow unfolding of awareness. Speed can make us efficient, but only slowness makes us human. When we move slowly, we start to see the way light spills through a window in the morning, the rhythm of our breath, the subtle shift between thought and awareness. We realize that life isn't happening to us. It's happening with us. Psychologists call this temporal myopia, the inability to perceive the long term because we're blinded by immediacy. It's why we chase dopamine hits, likes, views, messages, instead of meaningful goals that require patience. Slowness reverses this blindness. It stretches time. It reveals what's been there all along. There's wisdom in stillness, the same wisdom the Stoics, Buddhists, and Taoists all tried to teach. Nature never hurries, yet everything is accomplished. When you slow down, you stop living for the next moment and start living in this one. You see that the river of life moves, whether you swim fast or not. That the miracle is not in arriving somewhere new, but in finally being here. Carl Honore, author of In Praise of Slow, once said, "Speed is the single biggest drug of our time." He wasn't condemning technology or ambition, but our addiction to haste, the belief that faster is always better. We consume at high velocity and call it progress, but when everything accelerates, nothing sinks in. We scroll instead of read. We glance instead of gaze. We react instead of reflect. And so, we lose the texture of experience. Slowness gives that back. It's the art of doing less, but being more. The ancient Greeks called it skole, the root of the word school. It meant leisure, devoted to reflection. To learn, they didn't cram more information. They created space for wisdom to appear. Imagine sipping tea instead of gulping coffee between meetings. Imagine writing a letter instead of firing off a text. Imagine spending an hour walking without a destination, simply noticing. That's slowness, a rebellion against the tyranny of urgency. Slowness doesn't mean apathy, it means mastery. The musician who plays with feeling, not haste. The craftsman who shapes wood grain by grain. The writer who chooses words like stones placed carefully on a path. Speed creates success, slowness creates art. And if life is art, then it deserves patience. The Italian movement, slow living, emerged as a response to this global acceleration. It wasn't about laziness, it was about reclaiming quality over quantity. The slow food movement began in Rome, protesting the opening of a McDonald's near the Spanish Steps. Its message was simple: if we eat fast, we forget to taste. If we live fast, we forget to live. To slow down is to resist the illusion that time is something to be spent. It's not currency, it's existence. And the more you hurry, the more you lose it. There's a quiet power in the slow life, in watching the world unfold without trying to accelerate it. You begin to understand that depth and speed are opposites. that a moment deeply lived can contain more life than a decade of distraction. As Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." Maybe we don't need more hours in the day. Maybe we just need to stop sprinting through them, reconnecting with nature. There's a strange irony in modern life. We've conquered nature, yet we've never felt more lost in it. We live surrounded by glass, screens, and signals, but somewhere along the way, we've exiled ourselves from the soil that made us. We scroll through sunsets instead of feeling their warmth. We listen to rain through noise apps instead of the window. We've replaced the experience of nature with the aesthetic of nature, and we wonder why we feel disconnected. But nature doesn't disappear because we ignore it. It waits, quietly, patiently, for us to remember. The Japanese have a word for this remembering: Shinrin-yoku, or forest bathing. It doesn't mean hiking for exercise or taking photos of trees. It means immersing yourself in the forest, breathing with it, listening to it, letting it cleanse your mind. Studies have shown that 20 minutes among trees can lower cortisol, slow your pulse, and sharpen your attention. But the real miracle isn't physiological, it's spiritual. Because when you stand among trees, you realize something profound. They don't strive, they grow. They don't rush to bloom. They bloom when it's time. Every leaf that falls teaches impermanence. Every sunrise over the horizon whispers renewal. And in those moments, you understand that you are not separate from nature. You are nature disguised as a person. We've built cities to protect us from the elements, but in doing so, we've walled ourselves off from our origins. Concrete has replaced soil, and algorithms have replaced instincts. We've become experts at navigating maps, but lost in our own landscape. The modern human has forgotten how to be in nature without trying to use it. But something extraordinary happens when you step outside, not to conquer, but to listen. When you walk barefoot on grass and feel the pulse beneath you. When you sit by the ocean and realize the waves breathe in rhythm with your lungs. When you look at the night sky and remember that the same carbon in your bones was once a burning star. That realization isn't poetic, it's scientific and sacred. Henry David Thoreau, who left civilization to live by Walden Pond, once wrote, "Heaven is under our feet as well as over our heads." What he discovered wasn't a new philosophy, it was an old truth buried under convenience and noise. We think silence is emptiness, but in nature, silence is symphony. The hum of insects, the crackle of leaves, the distant echo of thunder. These are not sounds around you. They are sounds of you. Psychologists call this the biophilia effect, the innate human tendency to seek connection with life and living systems. We feel calmer among plants, more centered near water, more inspired under open sky. It's not nostalgia, it's biology. We evolved in rhythm with the Earth's cycles, day and night, growth and decay, birth and death. But in chasing control, we forgot to trust the rhythm. There's an ancient rhythm in everything that lives, a pulse we used to feel in our own bodies before schedules and alarms drowned it out. The sun rises not because we tell it to, but because the world turns. The tide doesn't rush to meet the shore. It flows in patience. Nature teaches us the very thing we've unlearned: balance. The Taoists saw nature as a mirror. They didn't worship it. They studied it. They observed how water flows, yielding yet unstoppable. How trees bend in storms yet stand tall after. How everything in nature grows not by force, but by alignment with what already is. And maybe that's what we've been missing. Alignment. Not productivity. Not dominance. Just harmony. To reconnect with nature is not to abandon civilization. It's to remember what civilization is for. Our technology, our comfort, our art. All of it should bring us closer to life, not farther from it. But somehow, we've built a world that distracts us from the very thing it was meant to celebrate. So maybe reconnection begins simply, by going outside without a goal, by touching bark and realizing it's older than your ancestors, by breathing air that once moved through mountains and forests before you were born, by realizing that the planet isn't something you live on, it's something you live with. The more we remember this, the less we'll need to escape, because we'll no longer be separate from what we seek. As John Muir wrote, "Going to the mountains is going home." And home was never lost. We just forgot the way back. The comfort trap. Comfort. It sounds like peace, but sometimes it's just a beautifully disguised cage. We spend our lives chasing it. Softer beds, smoother apps, faster deliveries, easier everything. And at first, it feels like progress. But over time, comfort becomes something else. A quiet paralysis. We weren't built for constant ease. Our ancestors woke with the sun, hunted in the cold, and fought to survive. Discomfort wasn't an enemy. It was a teacher. It sharpened instincts, revealed strength, and taught meaning through struggle. Today, most of our struggles can be solved with a screen tap. And yet, anxiety has never been higher. Why? Because when life becomes too easy, meaning becomes hard to find. Think about it. When was the last time you felt truly alive? It probably wasn't while scrolling on your couch. It was when you were slightly afraid, a little uncertain, fully present. Maybe hiking a trail that tested your legs. Maybe confessing something honest to someone who mattered. Maybe starting something you weren't sure you could finish. Those moments, the ones that sting, stretch, and scare you, that's where life hides. But comfort dulls that edge. It whispers, "Stay where you are. You're fine." And every time you listen, a small part of you goes quiet. You don't even notice it. The slow erosion of curiosity, the soft decay of courage. You start mistaking comfort for happiness and safety for peace. But safety isn't peace. It's just the absence of movement. Nietzsche once said, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." But the opposite is also true. Without a why, even the easiest life feels unbearable. And that's what the comfort trap steals, your why. Because when everything is smooth, there's nothing to fight for. And when there's nothing to fight for, even success tastes bland. Modern comfort promises freedom, but delivers dependence. We depend on climate control to feel okay, on notifications to feel connected, on convenience to feel capable. The more effortless life becomes, the more effort it takes just to feel something. That's the paradox of progress. We made the world easier, but not ourselves stronger. Growth is uncomfortable by design. The muscle only builds when it breaks. The mind only expands when it doubts. The soul only deepens when it endures. Comfort interrupts that sacred process. It offers pleasure now, purpose later, and most of us never make it to later. But here's the truth. Discomfort isn't punishment. It's permission. Permission to evolve. To meet the parts of yourself that only appear when you're tested. When you choose challenge over ease, you're not choosing pain. You're choosing transformation. The Stoics knew this. They practiced voluntary discomfort, fasting, cold exposure, minimalism, not to suffer, but to remember what truly matters. Seneca wrote, "Set aside a certain number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, and ask yourself, is this the condition I feared?" He understood that the fear of discomfort is worse than discomfort itself. When you stop running from it, it loses its power. Comfort is seductive because it tells you you've arrived. But life isn't about arrival. it's about becoming. Every time you step outside your comfort zone, you trade illusion for truth. You realize you didn't need perfect conditions. You needed courage. You didn't need certainty. You needed motion. And maybe that's what our generation must remember. The goal isn't to make life effortless, but meaningful. Because meaning is built, not delivered. It's forged through friction, the heat of failure, the weight of persistence, the cold of uncertainty. It's not supposed to be comfortable. It's supposed to be real. So the next time you feel that pull toward ease, that whisper saying, take the shortcut, skip the risk, pause. Ask yourself, am I protecting my peace or my fear? Because one will set you free, and the other will make your comfort your prison. Closing reflections, the silent awakening. So here we are, at the edge of silence, simplicity, focus, nature, and discomfort. 5 forgotten truths that once shaped how humans lived and how we became human in the first place. When you strip away the noise, the excess, the distractions, you don't lose the world. You rediscover it. You begin to hear things again. Not just sounds, but signals. Your intuition, your heartbeat, the subtle pull of what actually matters. In silence, you find your inner voice. In simplicity, you reclaim your time. Through focus, you channel your energy. In nature, you reconnect with something larger than yourself. And in discomfort, you remember your strength. These aren't lifestyle choices. They are ancient coordinates, guiding points back to your center. And that center is where power lives. Not the loud, external kind, but the quiet, unshakable kind. The kind that doesn't need validation, comparison, or noise to know its worth. We often think awakening is about adding knowledge, success, possessions. But true awakening is about subtraction, removing what isn't you so what's left can finally breathe. That's why silence feels so uncomfortable at first. It's not empty, it's honest. It shows you what you've been avoiding. But once you sit in that stillness long enough, something profound happens. You stop seeking escape and start seeking essence. You stop asking, what should I do next? And start asking, who am I becoming? And that shift from doing to being changes everything. Because being awake in this world is an act of rebellion. We live in a culture that monetizes your distraction, rewards your busyness, and numbs your awareness. To be fully present, to choose depth over dopamine, is the rarest form of freedom left. So maybe the revolution isn't loud at all. Maybe it starts quietly, with you unplugging for a moment, taking a walk without your phone, sitting with discomfort instead of escaping it, choosing to listen instead of react. These small rebellions ripple outward, into your work, your relationships, your art, your life. Because every time one person chooses consciousness over convenience, the world tilts, just slightly, toward balance again. And maybe that's the true power of stillness and discomfort. They remind us that we are not machines built for efficiency. We are beings built for experience, to feel, to fail, to create, to become. So as you step back into the noise, take these 5 truths with you, not as rules, but as reminders. That silence is not emptiness. That simplicity is not lack. That focus is not limitation. That nature is not luxury. And that discomfort is not suffering. They are all doorways, back to the version of you that's fully alive. And maybe that's what this whole journey has been about. Not changing the world, but remembering how to be in it. If this stirred you, hit that like button, subscribe for the next journey, and turn on notifications. Take a moment to let it settle, to feel the stillness that remains when the noise fades. Maybe that silence isn't emptiness, but the sound of you finally waking up. What you felt here isn't something new. It's something you've always known. Because awakening was never out there. It's been waiting inside you all along.